Man was made to sit quietly and find the truth within. For most of our lives, we rely on our senses to help us navigate our way through the world. However, we notice many instances where the limitations of these tools become very clear. Sight cannot help us to see the truth, and our ears cannot hear the deepest desires of our hearts. Our senses are tools for the outer world. But what if the insights and answers we seek and need lie elsewhere, within us? Eastern philosophy has proven to be a powerful tool in finding our deepest self-awareness and tranquility. After all, a journey to the East is a journey inwards, advancing towards our own core being and reaching a whole other level of understanding. That is where the hidden answers we are seeking are held. Once you understand yourself, you are able to understand everyone else. Once you understand a drop of water, you understand the ocean. Taoism is an ancient philosophical teaching initially passed on orally by masters to their students over many millennia. The first written records of the teachings of Taoism can be found in the writings of Lao Tzu, which means Old Master, a philosopher who lived around 500 BC in ancient China. It is a spiritual and practical teaching on how to live your life in harmony with the Tao. In order to understand the Tao, we must first consider our own view of the world. Taoism does not have a god in the way that the Abrahamic religions do. There is no omniscient being that is well aware of his role in the world and of his own existence, who created and controls the universe. In Christianity, it is clear that God created the world, established moral norms, and forms man in his own image. In the Western world of thought, we separate these components from each other. We separate living from lifeless matter and distinguish between body, mind, and soul. In Taoism, the world grows out of itself. There's no separation. A plant is not made up of flowers, leaves, and stems. It grows out of itself, without understanding how and why it actually grows. But its growth is not random. It's rather driven by a kind of directed spontaneity. To many people, this is the most confusing aspect of Taoism, its very definition. The Tao is the indefinable process of the world, the pattern and substance of everything that exists. The Tao grows out of itself without being aware of how it brings forth the universe. Taoism is more than a philosophy or a religion. Taoism should be understood as being that trusts in the power of spontaneous decisions that arise from a calm and selfless mind. A system of belief, attitudes, and practices set towards being one with the Tao, the nature of all things, in order to get access to inner peace and enlightenment. Each person can discover the Tao, which means way or path in translations, on their own terms. The principle of the Tao is spontaneity. It functions thoughtlessly, but not randomly. A teaching like this can be very hard to grasp when most people desire very concrete definitions of their own life. In our Western society, we try to plan all our actions. We give even small decisions a great deal of thought by gathering all available information, and yet quite a lot still goes wrong. Despite all the information we have access to, we still feel like making the wrong decision. The Taoist lives the spontaneity of the Tao in his own life, and therefore tries to let decisions and actions flow from himself. He trusts that the right attitude of mind will spontaneously lead to the best decisions and actions. The truth taught in Taoism is to embrace life and actions that support you as a person. In his most famous collection of teachings, the Tao Te Ching, 81 short poetic verses, Lao Tzu explains how to act in accordance with the alternating cycles of nature. In other words, one needs to go with the flow. It completely upturns the way we see ourselves, the world, and others, while offering a wholly different way of living based on wholeness, balance, harmony, and spontaneity. Like most spiritual concepts, it can seem counterintuitive at first, because Taoism runs contrary to the ethics of our capitalistic, object-oriented society. Try not to fixate on language, or else you'll not be able to understand where the words point. Here are the 5 most life-changing lessons I learned from Lao Tzu. Life is a cycle. Those who are used to linear thinking would see life as a straight line. After a day, it's a night. After life, it's death. We just spend some time here, then vanish. End of everything. If we live or die makes no difference to the bigger picture. We are small and insignificant, right? What else can there be? But a day doesn't end at a night. A night is the beginning of another day. So life doesn't end at death either. There's no beginning, neither is there an ending. The perfectly rounded cycle shape of the Taoist symbol represents this continuation of life in all things, and with it the belief that life continues after we die. Death is merely a transition. Universes are born and die. Stars are formed from dust, blazing brightly, providing light and life to all living beings. This is a beautiful dance of creation, of birth, expansion, decay, and death, and it happens all by itself, with absolute effortlessness. Life simply lives itself. We as humans are the only species with ideas to the contrary. We think we somehow have to do life. We force this terrible burden upon us of trying to make life work and getting things to match up to how we think they should be. But life is characterized by change. Yet our mind cannot fully comprehend or process change. What we place our identity and happiness in today may not be around tomorrow. This results in our feeling of being lost, of being treated unfairly, even blasting anger towards the unknown. Therefore, the sage stays rooted in the Tao, the one true constant. As Lao Tzu says, life is a series of natural and spontaneous changes. Don't resist them. That only creates sorrow. Let reality be reality. Let things flow naturally forward in whatever way they like. We have to let go of our compulsion to continually try to control and manipulate reality. Letting things flow doesn't mean we should never take action, because our actions are part of the universe in motion. Nothing ever changes, but it will never stay the same either. Or in Lao Tzu's words, if you realize that all things change, there's nothing you will try to hold on to. If you're not afraid of dying, there's nothing you cannot achieve. In the end, understanding Taoism is simply accepting oneself. This leads to inner peace. Your nature is ever changing and is always the same. The Tao says, you matter. Wu Wei, go with the flow. The perspective of the masculine principle of Yang over the feminine principle of Yin is promoted in our world from the earliest stages of education to our adult working life. From a young age, we are conditioned to feel a sense of lack and limitation, the feeling that whatever we have and are is never enough. We anxiously think that we should always be doing something in order to close the gap between what we think we are and what we believe we should be. But our understanding of should is more often than not based upon our own ignorance and desperate need for control. Our mind likes to think it's in control of situations and is hesitant to let go of that illusion. In fact, our mind will fight tooth and nail to stay in control. In verse 29, Lao Tzu tells us that if we think we can control the universe and somehow improve it, we are deluded. All we would probably do would be to create universal disaster. To tamper with it is to spoil it, he says. To grasp it is to lose it. The thing you desperately want today is often the thing that brings you misery tomorrow. And quite often, good things come out of seemingly bad things. What we need to accept is that we won't have everything at the exact time we need it, because we are simply not in control. Arguing with this reality will only cause us suffering, and it's an argument we will never win. Life is a succession of experiences, both good and bad, pleasurable and painful, happy and sad, and constantly changing. Resistance will make our mind get locked into a vicious and self-destructive spiral of negativity. We tend to think of resistance as being a sign of strength, so the concept of non-resistance is a difficult concept for many people to understand. But Lao Tzu explains it perfectly in verse 76. Stiffness is a companion of death, flexibility a companion of life. An army that cannot yield will be defeated. A tree that cannot bend will crack in the wind. In the cosmic sphere of energy, Wu Wei is the feminine, Yin principle of the universe, and one of Taoism's most important concepts. Translated into English from Lao Tzu's perspective, Wu Wei means effortless action or natural non-intervention. Wu Wei refers to the cultivation of a state of being in which our actions are quite effortlessly in alignment with the ebb and flow of the elemental cycles of the natural world. It is not something we can understand by intellectual discourse or attain by rigorous practice. On the contrary, the depth of Wu Wei is only revealed to us when we are humble enough to let go of controlling our life and instead live by its spontaneous principle. Stop trying to control and grasp everything around you. Instead of moving against life, let life move through you. By allowing action to happen as it wants to happen, you surrender to the flow of life as it gently moves through you and around you. The answers are usually there, or will present themselves when you step out of the way and stop creating obstructions to the flow. In this state of effortless effort, all you need to do is look, listen, and respond in the most appropriate way using all the knowledge, experience, and resources available to you. On the other hand, another essential component of Wu Wei is knowing when not to act. Sometimes holding back is the most appropriate response until you feel truly moved to take action. Life is all about a yin-yang balance of action and inaction. As Lao Tzu says, be like water. Obstacles may come your way, but when they do, you maneuver around them just as water flows around rocks. Empty yourself. If you want to become full, let yourself be empty. Emptiness is another difficult proposition for many people because it seems closely linked to loneliness. As humans, we do everything we can to escape loneliness. So much of our life experience is based around filling ourselves up. We schedule every second of our days, fill up vacant and open spaces in our minds to stay occupied, and turn to social media for company. We dismiss the value of solitude and empty spaces, so we fight against them. We are driven by the need to acquire and accumulate in order to fight loneliness, but Lao Tzu suggests we instead adopt a practice of daily diminishing. By daily diminishing, we let go of all the things we are holding on to which we think we need, including old thoughts, beliefs, and habits that no longer serve us. However, this doesn't mean giving away all your possessions and heading off to live in a cave for the rest of your life. It simply means letting go of our mental tendency to cling to things. A concept quite similar to the Buddhist teaching of why attachments due to grasping and clinging causes us suffering. For example, we can spend years chasing after our dream job or the perfect relationship, and once we attain these things, our joy will probably be quite short-lived. Because once gained, we then have to worry about maintaining these things, and with it our happiness that we've carelessly attached to our achievements. We are denying a simple truth, that maintaining the objects of our acquisition is an even greater challenge than acquiring them. The more we have to worry about losing these things again. That's why Lao Tzu suggests we empty ourselves. This inner realization or empty state of mind is characterized by simplicity, patience, and restraint. The empty mind is a Taoist practice of bringing stillness to your mind. It is also known as the Great Nothing, which represents being able to see what's in front of you when you're not busy looking for something else. To be empty in this way means to have your mind empty of any impulses, aspirations, wishes, or desires that are contrary to the qualities of the Tao. The Chinese parable of the centipede shows why Taoism trusts in the principle of spontaneity and emptiness. The centipede was happy and content until a gray-brown toad asked him, "Please tell me which of your legs goes after which." This occupied his mind so much that the centipede laid in a ditch, confused, wondering how to walk. Think about it this way: your problems are pretty much just existing as thoughts in your mind. In other words, for the problem to be, you need to be thinking about it. If your attention moves elsewhere, the problem ceases to exist until you next think about it. As Lao Tzu says, if you can empty your mind of thoughts, your heart will know the tranquility of peace. Meditation is an excellent practice in this regard. Even just a few minutes a day will over time rewire your brain, enabling you to take a more objective view of the content of your mind. The more you care about other people's approval, the more you become their prisoner. As social beings, a core human need is to be admired, loved, and respected. We seek approval from others by crafting an image of ourselves to fit in with the tribe. Historically, to be cast out of the tribe meant certain death. The question is, does it really work? Is the experience of approval ever anything more than shallow? And what value does the approval have if you know that you're not being your authentic self? The need to always have the approval of others can be a paralyzing curse and isolating prison. It's also hollow and endlessly frustrating because people's opinions are ever changing without a recognizable pattern. Most of the time, it's not even personal. People are simply projecting their own conditioning and ignorance. What they think of you often reveals more about them than it does about you. It's time to stop this totally self-defeating endeavor and live bravely in accordance with your own nature and calling. After all, the only approval you should really be worried about is your own. Follow your heart. Do your best and let other people think what they think, because they will anyway. Harmony is achieved by balance. Tao engenders one, one engenders two, two engenders three, three engenders all things. All things carry the yin, femininity, while embrace the yang, masculinity. Neutralizing energy brings them into harmony. While the Tao is the primordial ground of all being, Qi represents the primordial energy. In Taoism, the primal energy divides into the two poles, Yin and Yang. We find this polarization, for example, in the two sexes. A special focus of Taoism is on the two opposing poles of force and spirit. Most Taoist meditation exercises aim to reunite power and mind and thus bring them into harmony with the Tao. The Chinese concept of Yin and Yang describes nature in dualities, with two opposite, complementary, and interdependent forces. In other words, two halves balancing each other and forming a whole. Yin and Yang always flows and changes with time. One aspect increases as the other decreases, and this balance continues as a pattern in nature. The black color stands for masculinity, the reality, the touch, feel dimension of life, while the white color represents the femininity, the dreamy, imaginative illusions and feeling, the masculine and feminine forces of the universe, chaos and order, what we can see and touch versus what we can only feel. No matter how unique we all are, both energies are a part of us, differing only in intensity and ratio. Examining and understanding these patterns in ourselves and around us brings more balance into our life. The black dot and the white dot represent the seeds of change, the uncertain nature of life. At any given moment, the possibility of order turning into chaos and chaos turning into order are always present. For example, if you become too rigid, you may break under pressure. Instead, you should become softer and more flexible to restore your inner balance of yin and yang. When two great forces oppose each other, victory will go to the one that knows how to yield. Balancing both forces means constantly changing between reacting and responding, between giving and taking. Ask yourself what the balanced state of your mind, your environment, and your relationships look like. Only when you learn how to balance your life, your thinking, and your behavior, you exist in accordance with nature and will find peace and harmony. With that comes your true happiness. In Lao Tzu's words, when you realize there's nothing lacking, the whole world belongs to you. When you realize you have enough, you are truly rich. Taoism is a practice of change, and it always changes to meet the needs of the times. Even nowadays, Taoism is evolving to keep pace with our modern, quickly changing culture, while holding onto a few key concepts to keep the practice true to the Tao. There are over 7 billion people in the world, so there are over 7 billion paths to Taoism. Every person can teach us something. If you found value and enjoyed watching, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more videos.